this is the Sean Duhame Trio. I hope you enjoyed.
Hi, I'm Harriet Clooney. Come check out my show, Scrap Cooking, where I'm going to show you how to use the bits and bobs, the ends, the pieces of things that you might otherwise throw in the compost. I'm going to show you how to turn them into something delicious.
Your notes are right here.
Okay, he wants us to go. Oh, all good. Oh, perfect. Can you please do that? Good morning, everyone. We're going to be starting in just about 30 seconds. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Mayor's Breakfast. On behalf of Mayor Jim Watson, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and the Ottawa Business Journal, we welcome you here this morning to City Hall. I'm Su-Ling Ching. I'm the President and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade, and I'm joined this morning by my co-presenter, Michael Curran. Michael is here somewhere, from the Ottawa Business Journal, our publisher. We're really thrilled to be here, gathered safely together in our beautiful City Hall in Ottawa. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We honor the peoples and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We honor all First Nations, Inuit and Métis people, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Thank you for being here this morning and investing your time and energy in the growth of our business community and the building of our city. A big thank you to the team at City Hall for hosting us and working with us to keep everyone safe. Throughout this last 2 years, we have followed the guidance of the highest levels of health officials, including our colleagues at Ottawa Public Health. Our focus is to support an environment in which businesses and our community can remain open, and that we can gather safely together as we continue to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. To that end, we continue to recommend the use of all the tools at our disposal. And so we are compelled to remind you that although mask wearing is no longer mandatory, OPH strongly recommends the use for those with potential for severe illness and those in indoor settings where physical distancing is difficult. We accept the personal choices made by each of you and respectfully request that you do the same. Before we move on, I wish to take a moment to acknowledge the wound in our world. Today is the 50th day of the invasion of Ukraine. Thank you to everyone who attended last month's event featuring the Ukraine Chargé d'Affaires from the Ukrainian Embassy. A reminder to all that we have created a page on our website with resources on how to support Ukraine. For your information, we have suspended our certificates of origin for goods exported to Russia, with the exception of those for humanitarian aid. The Ottawa Board of Trade is the voice of business and key advocate for economic growth in our nation's capital. Our mission is to cultivate a thriving, world-class business community in Ottawa through leadership and partnerships. To that end, we are excited to welcome you here, the business community, and all of the leaders of Ottawa, along with our honored guest and keynote, General Wayne Eyre, Chief of Defence Staff of Canada. This morning, I would like to welcome two leaders who serve on our board of directors, David Coletto of Abacus Data and James Baker of Keynote Group. I think you are here. They're there. Oh, they had to sit together. Welcome also to City Councillors Ralston King and Riley Brockington. I think that I saw them here earlier today. The work of our board could not be done without the commitment and expertise of our volunteers. Today, I'm pleased to recognize the leaders supporting our Ambassador and Membership Committee, Jennifer Reynolds, David Dunlop, Linda McCallum, and Jared Goldsmith. If you are not yet a supporting member of the Ottawa Board of Trade, they would be pleased to share with you why that's a good idea. 2022 is an exciting year for the city as we contemplate our future. We must leverage the lessons that we've learned over these last 2 years and work together to build an inclusive and sustainable city driven by growing businesses and a thriving economy. The Board of Trade continues to advocate for business success and community prosperity at all levels of government. This year, we all have an important part to play in our own future through both the provincial and the municipal election. Our board is preparing an election strategy under the leadership of David Coletto to ensure our city building priorities are well known and that we are strengthening our collaboration. We continue to partner with stakeholders on priorities and policy setting, as well as on-the-ground programs. The Workforce Confidence Initiative is well underway, and we have just received a new shipment of rapid tests for the use of our small businesses in Ottawa. We congratulate our partners at Invest Ottawa and Ecobia for their rollout of the Downtown Ottawa Business Relief Fund, which has received over 1,100 applications in just 30 days, 300 of which have already been approved. Finally, as we think about bolstering the hardest-hit sectors of our city, please consider being a tourist in our own hometown, inviting family and friends to visit the nation's capital. Commit to and promote the Buy Local promise and become an Ottawa ambassador at cometoottawa.ca. We have come a long way, and there is much to be done, but we must never lose sight of how wonderful our city is and how much opportunity lies before us to create, to grow, and to lead. As we kick off today's breakfast, let's recognize the great organizations that support this speaker series. Our lead sponsor, Hydro Ottawa, presenting sponsor, Commissionaires Ottawa, Algonquin College, Enbridge, the Westin Ottawa, RBC, Rogers Communications, our global partner, Oakwood Designers and Builders, our speaker gift sponsor, Eamon Harden, our coffee sponsor, whom I'm sure is very popular this morning. Jeff is here joining us from Capital Office, Interiors and Stillcase, and our breakfast sponsor, La Cité. Thank you to all of these sponsors. Can we give them a big round of applause for their support? It's only through your support that we're able to gather here today. And now I would like to invite today's presenting sponsor to the stage to say a few words, Paul Gagnon, CEO of Commissionaires Ottawa. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Sulin. My name is Paul Gagnon, the CEO of Commissionaire Ottawa, as well as the CEO of Commissionaire Ottawa Group. Good morning, Your Worship, Chief Defense Staff, organizers and fellow sponsors. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous souhaite la bienvenue et c'est un honneur pour moi de me joindre à vous pour ce petit déjeuner du maire. At Commissionaire, we show our gratitude and respect to military and RCMP veterans and their family by hiring them. As well, we are non-citizen, or non-veteran citizen, I should say, who share their passion to protect people, property, and information. But this is only part of our social mandate, and we will continue to explore, expand, innovate, so we can offer meaningful employment for those above. Further, we will expand promoting and supporting programs to enhance the well-being of veterans and their families, which is also part of our social mandate, which is why we have grown in more ways than one and in more ways than just a number of employees. We did ask ourselves, if someone who is highly skilled in the military or the RCMP and is looking for a career change, what kind of job can we offer them? Today, we at Commissionaires Ottawa manage the largest digital fingerprinting infrastructure across the country with over 50 offices from coast to coast. For many years now, we offer background screening online or in person, threat risk assessment, workplace investigation services, and on and on and on and on. And then between 2018 and 2020, we got bold. That's when we began to expand. That's when we began to expand into security installation and IoT network. We did this by acquiring 3 companies that together are known as Content Network and Security, Inc. Then in December 2021, we acquired ADGA Group, whose highly skilled workforce has about 20% of veterans. Today, ADGA solves complex business problems by assessing, designing, building, and operating systems and processes. Things like cybersecurity, simulation and software solutions, operational fulfillment for defense, which, by the way, is our largest client, public and commercial client. By the way, here this morning with me is Rick Fossett, the Vice President of Defense Division at ADGA. Rick is also a veteran of 30-plus years of service as a commissioned officer. And what a pleasure to have him on board, and it's great working with you. Rick, sitting right in the middle of everything, as usual. In closing, as we navigate the talent war, we are proud to offer our people a greater diversity of meaningful employment opportunities. We are proud of supporting veterans' well-being, such as Multi-Faith Veteran House, taking homeless veterans off the street, reintroducing them into society. Pearly Health, Military Resource Center on bases here in Ottawa, Petawawa, North Bay. And we are proud to offer our clients access to 3 Canadian-owned and operated companies, ADGA, Comnet, and Commissionaires, offering a full spectrum of physical, electronic, and cybersecurity solutions for our buildings, for our systems, for our community, and for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, very much for your continued support. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the podium Mayor Jim Watson.
Well, thank you very much, Suling. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue à l'Hôtel de Ville. Welcome to City Hall, and thank you, General, very much for agreeing to speak with our business community here today. I'd also like to recognize that we're on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. And I'd like to honor the land and the peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation whose ancestors have lived on this territory for millennia and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. And in fact, we proudly display the two Algonquin flags here in the council chamber as well as outside at Marion Dewar Plaza. I want to take a moment to thank the Board of Trade and Sue Ling and her team for supporting our economic recovery and for helping businesses scale, collaborate, and communicate at this critical time. The Ottawa Business Journal is also a key component to our rebuild strategy. It's the leading source of business news in the region. I want to thank Michael Curran and his team for highlighting economic recovery initiatives and for raising issues that are vital to the prosperity and quality of life of our residents. I also want to welcome my colleagues Ralston King and Riley Brockington, and Member of Parliament Michael Barrett is with us with the Brockville Rifles. Great to have them with us here today. And I'll just offer a few updates before we introduce our guest speaker. The OBJ reported on Atletico Ottawa's initiative to raise funds for Ukraine at its opening match last Saturday. It turned out to be a great day with an Atletico Ottawa victory, and all proceeds from ticket sales and other fundraising initiatives donated directly to the humanitarian assistance of Ukrainians. Canadians stand in solidarity with the people of Yukon, and there was such a great turnout last month at our breakfast area with the Charge d'Affaires, and I've seen him a number of times since, and he's very appreciative of the outpouring of support by residents of Ottawa. I also want to remind retail and commercial property owners that application deadline for the Convoy Occupation Tax Deferral Program is April 22nd. This program is being administered by Invest Ottawa, and we thank Michael at Invest Ottawa and the whole team for taking on this added responsibility of coordinating the federal and provincial dollars to make sure they get as quickly out the door to those businesses who had a really difficult time and a struggle during the convoy occupation. The program provides some relief to eligible property impacted by the convoy by deferring their interim and final property tax deadlines to September 15th, 2022. It helps with cash flow. We're not allowed to directly give money to businesses. It's against the Municipal Act. But what we can do is ensure that we don't have bills landing on people's doorstep just when they opened up. So we thank our friends at the provincial and federal government for that good work. Yesterday, right here in this room, City Council approved a new protocol to work in collaboration with the Anishinaabe Algonquin host nation. The protocol is a key component of the Reconciliation Action Plan that Council approved in 2018 and will guide partnerships and shared action in the areas of arts, heritage, and culture. Council approved the 2021 operating results and disposition of any surplus or funding. We ended up the year with a surplus of $35.4 million because our prudent management over the course of the last several months, and adding to the city's reserve. Those dollars go to the city reserve, so when we come across another challenge, economic challenge, we have that rainy day fund to tap into. The pandemic situation, as we all know, has changed significantly over the last year, but COVID is still amongst us, and I appreciate Sue Ling's comments. In order to fight this virus, we have to continue to listen to our public health officials. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, General Wayne Eyre, who was appointed Chief of Staff in February 2021, acting Chief of Staff. He grew up on a farm near Wadena, Saskatchewan, and I said, that sounds familiar, and that was where Pamela Wallin, the former now Senator, CTV host, is from Wadena, and I think, General, you said her mother taught you, if I'm not mistaken, in that small town. Spent his high school years in Medicine Hat, Alberta, joined the Army Cadets at the age of 12 and been in uniform ever since. General Ayer attended Royal Roads Military College in Victoria and the Royal Military College in Kingston, and in 1988 he joined the 2nd Battalion Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, which, by the way, was formed right here in Ottawa at Lansdowne Park. And if you come to my office in the reception area, there's a huge painting of the flag being presented to Princess Patricia, and you can see the grandstand command of the old Central Canada exhibition in the background. So I was honored, I think it was the 100th anniversary of the Princess Patricia a few years ago, and their honorary colonel, I see the honorary colonel of the Army here, Paul, nice to have you here. Their honorary colonel is Adrian Clarkson, the former Governor General. So you'll see just outside the Aberdeen Pavilion this it's almost an urn with the engraving of the Princess Patricia painting that you can see up in my office. He served as, the general spent the majority of his career in command or deputy command positions and became the commander of the Canadian Army in August 2019. He served as military liaison for the government of Manitoba for the 1997 floods. We all remember those challenges, and commanded a company fighting the 1998 BC forest fires. General Ayer also commanded the task force that secured G8 summit. In 2010, he commanded the military response to both the 2015 Saskatchewan wildfires and the 2016 Fort McMurray evacuation. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree and 3 master's degrees in military studies, operational studies, and strategic studies. His decorations include the Order of Military Merit in the rank of Commander, the Meritorious Service Cross, and the Commander-in-Chief Unit Commendation. He also received the Chief of Defense Staff Commendation, the Order of National Security from South Korea, and was 3 times awarded the U.S. Legion of Merit, including the rank of Commander. You can imagine that as Chief of Defense Staff, his days are full, a request to speak across the country. We're very, very delighted that the General has agreed to spend a little bit of time with us, talk to us, and then answer a few of your questions. General, the podium is yours. Merci.
Well, Your Worship, firstly, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for that introduction as well. So, Su-Ling Ching, Michael Curran, sponsors of this terrific community building series, special guests, and I just have to say I'm delighted to see so many familiar faces and friends amongst the audience here today, and new friends as well. This is my 3rd time in Ottawa, so neighbors. All of us. So it's great to meet everybody here this morning. So, once again, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the breakfast. And I'd like to begin my remarks by acknowledging that we're here together today on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you this morning because there's a few things going on right now across the world and here at home. And I hope what I have to say today puts a few of those things that are going on into context. Puisque Ottawa est une ville gouvernementale, je sais que vous suiviez tous les budgets qui étaient déposés la semaine dernière. Je me réjouis des financements affectés à la défense et de la possibilité d'accélérer un certain nombre d'initiatives clés décrites dans notre politique de défense. Des initiatives qui contribueront directement à améliorer l'état de préparation de notre personnel et du matériel. So these are troubling times. Times that show Canada needs our armed forces more than ever. They're challenging times for the rules-based international order, an order that has been so key to our peace and prosperity since the end of the Second World War. And these are challenging times for us, the Canadian Forces, as an institution. And how we meet these challenges will define our future. Globally, we, along with our allies, partners, and other like-minded nations, need to ensure that future generations inherit a world that is governed by democracy and the rule of law, not one shaped by the cruelties and whims of despots and tyrants. Now, where our armed forces are concerned, we need to ensure that we are positioned and prepared to serve Canada effectively and to remain relevant to future generations of Canadians, because the world in which we operate is a complex and dangerous place. In 2020 and 2021 were, in a lot of ways, to a lot of people, train wrecks. And we were hoping 2022 would be better, but it's abundantly clear now that 2022 has not given us a break. You know, on top of the pandemic that continues, we've got war in Europe. And it's been almost 2 months since Russia invaded Ukraine. And this is not just a reprehensible, unprovoked war on a smaller, peace-loving neighbor. It's an attack on the liberal democratic order that has done so much for so long to create and maintain the stability that we enjoy. Generations of Canadians have grown up knowing no other world. But now, and this is no exaggeration, Putin's misguided ambition and unbridled aggression have created the most significant threat to global order since the Second World War. His recklessness has made the world a much more dangerous place and shaken our geopolitical situation, our geopolitical system, in ways that we have not yet begun to comprehend. Les répercussions de cette guerre dureront très longtemps. Putin cherche à faire un retour en arrière pour restaurer les gloires impériales, qu'elles soient réelles ou imaginaires. Mais cette guerre ne se déroule pas comme il l'avait prévu. He overestimated the capabilities of his military, and he underestimated the resilience and the fighting spirit of the Ukrainian people. You know, Napoleon once said that victory in war was 3 parts moral to 1 part physical, and which means there is no weapon as mighty as a brave heart. That will to fight, that will to win is absolutely essential. We are very proud of the fact that Canadian Armed Forces trainers deployed on Operation Unifier and had a role to play in preparing the Ukrainian military for this moment of trial, this moment of truth. You know, we helped with the skills, but that will to fight, the will to win, it's all theirs. You know, I went over to Ukraine at the beginning of December to visit our troops, but also to get a sense of the situation. And the number 1 question I had was, would they fight? And the answer was a resounding yes. Not just from them, but from our troops on the ground, working with them day in and day out. And they were convinced that they would fight, and we're seeing that play out right now. Russian soldiers are not being greeted as liberators, as they expected. They're being seen as foreign occupiers and invaders. So they're not enjoying the rapid success that Putin envisioned. Ukrainians are fighting for their lives, for their country, for their very way of life. And meanwhile, the Russian rank and file aren't really sure what they're fighting for, and it's showing. So Napoleon's dictum works both ways. You know, Putin doesn't really have the support, the enthusiastic support of his own people. This is his war. He owns this, you know, him alone. And he sought to create gaps and exploit seams in the NATO alliance. And in fact, he has done exactly the opposite. You know, if anything, he has brought the alliance closer together. His actions have reaffirmed the need for our great defensive pact and our collective faith in its strength. You know, I've seen this in my own interactions with my counterparts from other nations. And in fact, in an hour or two, I'm going to be talking to my Polish counterpart about how we're working together. Putin's war has renewed NATO's raison d'etre to stand shoulder to shoulder with other free, democracy-loving nations as a bulwark against aggressive expansionism and the spread of tyranny. But this is a very dangerous moment. And if you want to look for a similar moment in history where we have multiple powers at play, a confluence of new technologies, and a level of geopolitical uncertainty, you only need to look back at 1914. So we are determined to continue supporting Ukraine, but also keeping the conflict from spilling across the borders of our NATO allies and broadening its scope. And that is a real challenge, to thread that needle, to find that balance. Well, I'm incredibly proud of how the Canadian Armed Forces have reacted to this challenge, how we've responded. You know, the very deliberate and well-executed movement of our people out of Ukraine, of the delivery of aid, which continues and is going very well. Not just the delivery of our own aid, but we are instrumental in Europe in delivering aid from many of our other partners, as our Air Task Force in Europe does a tremendous job getting arms and ammunition and aid into the hands of Ukrainians. All of this has put a renewed focus on Operation Reassurance, which is Canada's broader contribution to peace and security in Europe. Now, in recent weeks, I visited NATO's Joint Force Command in Naples, and our people deployed to Latvia, where we, Canada, as a nation, we're getting tremendous praise for the leadership role we've taken in commanding that multinational battle group. And everywhere I go, every time I visit our people, I look them in the eye and talk about their mission, and I can see the passion, the dedication, the professionalism. They know why they're there. They know they're standing on the front lines of freedom. Morale is high. Cette partie du monde fera l'objet d'une attention particulière pendant un certain temps. Le mois dernier, le Premier ministre a annoncé le renouvellement de cette mission et il a autorisé le déploiement de jusqu'à 460 militaires canadiens supplémentaires pour soutenir les efforts de l'OTAN en Europe. And this is a test that we, the democracies of the West, cannot fail. Because what's going on in Ukraine is only the most obvious source of stress in the international order. China is increasingly using coercive and aggressive tactics to assert unilateral claims in the Indo-Pacific region and to advance its interests around the world. Now, while these types of activities remain below the threshold of armed conflict, they challenge long-standing norms and international law. And it's crucial to note that China has been watching and learning from the Ukraine crisis. Everything from the operational lessons on the ground to how we, as the international community, are responding to it, to the importance of national will and national leadership, to the information environment. And around the world, autocratic states, great and small, are working flat out to undermine what was once assumed to be the hard-won consensus towards liberal democracy. They add to and sometimes amplify other threats. Extremism, cultural conflict, and the polarizations of societies, especially here in the West amongst our liberal democracies, they're challenging democratic norms and institutions. And we saw that polarization at work here just a few short weeks ago with the occupation movement here on the streets of Ottawa. Criminal organizations and terrorist groups continue to threaten peace and stability, not just internationally, but we're seeing the rise of that domestically as well. Climate change and related domestic or related natural disasters lead to mass migration and other drivers of instability. And even here at home, climate change is having a huge impact on the frequency and the intensity of our armed forces' domestic deployments. And our capacity to fulfill other core missions is being affected. All of these challenges, for more than 2 years now, have been amplified and in the context of the global pandemic. But amid all this upheaval and disruption, one thing endures. It's that the members of Canada's armed forces continue to serve with valor, with courage, and with pride. And I'm proud of them each and every day. But make no mistake, we've been stretched pretty thin, and the last few years have been hard on the Canadian Armed Forces. We've been ready to boost the capacity of civilian emergency services when their own capacity to address issues has been overwhelmed. But in recent years, that frequency and intensity of these deployments has increased exponentially. But still, our military members have our citizens' backs through fires and floods and pandemics and ice storms and everything else that Mother Nature is going to throw at us. For a long time, the military response to the 1997 so-called flood of the century in Manitoba, that was last century, more to come, and the great ice storm of 1998 in Ontario and Quebec that many of you remember. Those were our military's most notable domestic deployments, and that was until March of 2020. And the armed forces responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our response has resulted in our largest and longest domestic operation in Canadian military history. And our people have played a leading role in the nation's response to the pandemic, and they have done remarkable work, very non-traditional tasks for us. But it's pushed us. The pandemic has pushed us and our institution to its limits. And the tempo has exhausted many of our members, and it's consumed much of our bandwidth over the last couple of years. In terms of personal readiness and trained effective strength, our numbers are not where we would like them to be, and they've gone down since the pandemic began. And then the pandemic health-driven health protection measures have further reduced our recruiting and training capacity, both of which hamper our readiness. But we're working hard now to fill those gaps. But we've got to work harder and we've got to work faster because the international security environment is demanding it. A dangerous, uncertain future looms, and it's not going to wait for us to be ready. So we have to be ready now. And as the Army says, ready to fight tonight. That's why last year I issued a direction called the Canadian Armed Forces Reconstitution Plan pour rétablir nos effectifs et notre état de préparation, alors que nous continuons de nous préparer et de nous adapter à un avenir incertain. Canada's national defense policy is strong, secure, engaged, calls for us to be strong here in Canada to protect Canada and Canadians, secure in the defense of North America, and engaged in the world as an active participant in maintaining global peace and security. And for many years, our strategic mindset has been focused on expeditionary operations, emphasizing, engaged in the world, the away game, if you will. And part of that was maintaining a fighting force, again, deployed anywhere, anytime in the world. And this new war in Europe has shown us that we can never and must never step back from that responsibility. And meanwhile, the new belligerence of our Arctic neighbor also drives home the need to ensure the defense and security of North America. So while we still have to recognize the importance of expeditionary overseas operations, we need to refocus our efforts on being strong at home. Because that element is going to become much more important. While defending Canadians at home has always been our top priority, we need to think hard about what that means. Now when disaster strikes, the armed forces, once that force of last resort for domestic emergencies, is often the first to get the call. And for us as an institution, this is a real time of introspection, a time to examine that strategic mindset. And think not about the armed forces that we are, but the armed forces we have to be, that Canadians need us to be. So our reconstitution has three priorities: people, operations, and modernization. And first, always has to be people. And what's going on in Ukraine is proof positive of what you can achieve when you have a force of motivated, dedicated people who believe in what they're doing. And at this point in our history, for our people, changing our institutional culture is absolutely essential. There are many parts of our culture that need to be preserved and admired, but there are others that have caused harm to our members as individuals and to us as an institution. And we need to build a more inclusive military where every member of our team can feel psychologically safe, valued, and welcome to contribute to the workplace in their authentic selves, to make sure that our armed forces can draw upon the best and brightest in Canadian society. We need to make sure that reality lives up to this expectation, and it isn't just the right thing to do, it's what we must do to ensure operational effectiveness. It's also what we have to do to win that highly competitive battle for talent. We have to be able to attract and retain talent from all segments of Canadian society, especially as the face of Canada so quickly and rapidly changes. Because if we can't attract that talent, we're not going to be able to protect and defend Canada into the future, and we're going to become irrelevant as an institution, which is not going to be, is not what Canada needs. We've got to make sure that we continue to reflect societal values and the diversity of the country we serve. And as those values and as Canadian culture evolves, as Canadian norms evolve, we have to ensure that we can maintain at pace. So this is at the front of our mind now as we put new energy into our recruiting system. You know, recruiting is just one side of the coin. Retention is the other side. And I'm happy to say that our Canadian Armed Forces retention is the envy of our allies. But even still, we have work to do. But after investing so much into recruiting and training and experience and skills, we're working harder to keep the right people in the right places, the right ranks, and the right occupations. You know, a big part of this is addressing the same issues that every Canadian faces, and that is the skyrocketing cost of living, of housing. And we see it here, we see it across the country, but it's more acute for our people as we expect them to move across the country on a more frequent basis. And this, as well, is right at the top of my priority list to address. You know, making these transitions as painless as possible for our members and their families is right at the top of our agenda. Our second priority has to be operations, because as we go through the reconstitution process, rebuilding for the future, we still have to be able to deliver excellence in the present. And you know, many like to say the enemy gets a vote. And we could go through a rebuilding process and be focused on that, but we could get drawn, and we are being drawn right back into what's happening currently. And the events in Ukraine have been a stark reminder to all of this. We have to look closely at all of our operations to ensure that they achieve the desired strategic effect, serve our vision for the Canadian Armed Forces, while balancing that capability to employ our forces across stressed occupations, stressed trades that are in short supply. You know, and finally, our third priority is modernization, because despite what's happening in the present, we cannot mortgage our future. That means continuing to advance projects called for in our defense policy, you know, such as the Arctic offshore patrol ships, advanced fighter jets. You saw some stuff in the media a couple weeks ago. New land vehicles, Canadian surface combatant warships, because we know we're going to need them. It means continuing to advance our abilities to meet adversaries in the newer domains, space, cyber, information, and be able to integrate our activities across these domains, because we can no longer do it in just stovepipes. So it's no longer just at sea, on land, or in the air. It's all together. It means adapting to the rapid acceleration of technology that's changing the ways in which wars will be fought. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics, hypersonic weapons. And it means continuing to focus on the modernization of NORAD, because we know our geographic isolation can't protect us the way it used to. You know, I had the opportunity just a couple of weeks ago to visit our people down there in Colorado Springs. And there, too, I was impressed with their dedication to this work, their unity and the purpose they share with our American allies to make us more, to make us all safer and more secure day in and day out. But overall, the armed forces that we have today is not the armed forces we need for the future, and we are on the cusp of so much change that has to come. So everything needs to be on the table. The reconstitution is just a start point to secure that starting point for change, and change is just going to accelerate. So we need to be adaptable because our security environment is going to continue to evolve. Modern warfare is, you know, in many ways, a come-as-you-are affair. So we need to accelerate this reconstitution. And I've challenged our team to take bold action, to think outside the box, to find ways to step on the gas, to break process if necessary, and take more risk. Because the future, you know, a more volatile, dangerous future just keeps coming, and we have to be ready for it. And last week's federal budget directed us to conduct a defense policy update, and it's all going to be done in this context. So I know we're all keen to get on with the discussion, and I want to leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. But I think in sum, this is a pivotal moment in our history of our rules-based international order, of our country, and of our armed forces. And it's been a difficult couple of years for our armed forces. Difficult for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the misconduct crisis, which has been so topical over the course of last year, and one of the reasons why, well, the reason why I've been thrust into this role. But I'm confident that our people will be able to continue to deliver. And I hope you all share my pride in their efforts and their accomplishments. And difficult times can lead to renewed focus and renewed purpose. And I'm determined to use my time, or whatever remains of it, as the Chief of Defence Staff to stabilize the Canadian Armed Forces in this time of turmoil and get us on a different path, a path of change, a path to be ready for the challenges, not just of the present, but the increasing challenges of the future. And these are difficult times, but we're going to carry on. That's what we do. That's what our members do. Members of our Canadian Armed Forces and our defense team are amongst the most professional, dedicated, and hardworking Canadians all around. And I am immensely proud to serve alongside them. So with that, let's move on with the conversation. Your Worship, I think we have a few minutes. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, General. What a wonderful, topical, timely, relevant, we could go on and on, a presentation. You really hit the head there. We do have about 10 minutes for questions. This is a very unique opportunity to pose a question directly to the Chief of Defence Staff. We have a microphone, wireless, being circulated. So if you have a question, please stand. Raise your hand and we'll bring that question to you. One of the reasons we want to do that, by the way, is we're broadcasting on Rogers TV, so we want to make sure the at-home TV audience can hear the question. So who would like to go first? This gentleman up here, just give us 1 second and we'll get that microphone right to you. General?
And I will have to say I may not have all the answers. What I found in this job is I have far more questions than I have answers.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, everybody. My name's Dom Spires. I'm the Defence Leader of Data Miner here in Canada. I'm going to warm you up, sir, with a quick question about aligning defence review with foreign policy review. You talked eloquently about strong, secure, engaged, and the up-and-coming review of that. So I think 6 years now we've had secure, strong, engaged. Trying to think the last time we had a foreign policy review, how does that impact your decision making in terms of future strategic and operational military policy?
So that is a great question, and not necessarily mine to answer, because that is a government policy decision. That's a government decision if they want to do a foreign policy review or not. But as we go forward, as we think deeply about defense policy and what advice we provide to government, we have to make certain assumptions about where our interests lie, where we need to focus in the world, and those assumptions will either be accepted or rejected by the decision makers. But you know, as with any planning effort, when you have aspects that you aren't completely clear about, or you need to receive further guidance, you list those assumptions up front.
Who would like to go next? Councillor Block.
Morning, General. Thank you for the presentation. Can you describe what skill set you're looking for in new recruits? What does the armed service need in new recruits in 2022 and going forward?
So another great question. We need technical skills. So a lot of our occupations that are involved in ones and zeros, that's a future of much work out there, and even more so with us. We need recruits of character, and what I mean by that are, you know, the willingness to serve, the willingness to embrace the values we have in the organization, and the willingness to learn. And let me expand on that aspect a bit. I'm going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole here. as we've taken a look at some of the challenges we've had, we have often historically focused on competence over character. And the fact is that many of our strategic failures have been as a result of character failures. And so if we get the right character in place, competence can come through training, through experience, through that will to learn. So I think that's what we're looking for mostly in our new recruits. And some of that we can develop, but some of that it will be a reflection of our society, and they'll come in with it.
I'll use my Sergeant Major voice.
We'll get the microphone to you too. Here we go.
Thank you, General Ayer. You've given us a really good aperçu of what's going on in the world. What does your heart say with regards to the likeliness of Canada engaging in a full conflict with regards to what's happening in Europe right now?
So Sandra, that's one of the questions that keeps me awake at night. Okay. You know, I'll just start off when I said familiar faces. You know, Sandra and I were Army cadets together. We were 15 years old together back out in Western Canada. So great to see you here. I don't know. War is unpredictable. Many nations have gone to war thinking it would be short, sharp, and over, have the troops home by Christmas. Historically, that has not been the case. We're dealing with an actor who is unpredictable, who is all about maintaining his place, his legacy in the world. Could it expand in the future? I just don't know. But my heart tells me we have to be ready. My moral responsibility, my legal responsibility as a Chief of Defense Staff is to do everything I can to ensure our troops are ready. And those of us who have seen war, you know, certainly hope that it never comes because the costs are just so high. But we owe it to our people to be ready. We owe it to our nation and our allies to be ready.
David Coletto.
Thank you, General, and good morning. As you travel across the country and you meet with members, I assume you ask them, what can I do to help? What's most likely to come up in that conversation?
So the number one issue that comes up as I travel around the country is the cost of living. And the challenges our people are facing in terms of finding affordable accommodations. As I mentioned in the speech, especially as we move around the country. You know, so addressing that has got to be a challenge. You know, part of that is cost of living. Part of that is a shortage of on-base military housing. You know, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 to 6,000 units short on our bases, which is also accentuating the housing problem. But that is the number one challenge. You know, number two is what I call quality of service. And so you join the military, you want to have meaningful work, you want to work with the most modern equipment, you want to have modern infrastructure, and you want to have great opportunities to travel the world and see things. And so we try to deliver that, but it's not the same all the time. If you tell a 20-year-old they're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years before they get an overseas deployment experience, that is 10% of their life. That's a long time. And so balancing all of those requirements to live up to the expectations as to what our young people want is a continual challenge.
We have time for probably 2 more questions. I think you're raising your hand. Yes, somewhat tepidly.
Thank you, General. 2020 and the pandemic has shown us many challenges, especially mental health. I'm curious to know, as the institution is restructuring and looking at different ways of how it can improve, is mental health part of this conversation, and will the CAF look towards implementing mental health strategies in the future?
No, absolutely, and it's one of my big concerns because this pandemic has dramatically affected the mental health of our country. with the stresses imposed, and our armed forces are no different, whether we had to go through the same challenges. You know, I see one of the biggest challenges is the social distancing that has been imposed by physical distancing. And what I mean by that, you know, we as humans, we are social creatures, and we thrive in an environment where we can be with others, just like this group here and that breakfast. And I'm so happy to see we're getting back to that, because far too long, for the last couple of years, we've had too many members who've been physically isolated and thus socially isolated. And regaining that social connection, I believe, is a key aspect of mental health. You know, I talked about reconstitution. We need to go through individual reconstitution as well. And what has this pandemic done to us, done to our families, and how do we rebuild that resilience? You know, one of the things, and I'm often asked, you know, my own practices to mental health. You know, a little bit of stress involved with this job, as you can appreciate. And so much of it is incorporating practices that we try to introduce to our troops. We have a program called the Road to Mental Readiness, which has some great tools, but weaving it into the fabric of your daily lives is sometimes a challenge, because it's developing habits, developing those routines where you put it in. So I try and live that behavior myself, and I encourage senior leaders to model that behavior and have it cascade down. But there's no one single silver bullet for the mental health challenges that we are facing. We need to continue to look after each other. We need to be more literate on what the indicators are of challenges. We need to be more accepting and understanding of challenges, and leaders at all levels have to have that flexible approach. That caring, respectful, inclusive approach.
Last one. If not, yes.
So I'm Captain Melchers from the Brockville Rifles. I'm a junior leader with the unit there. You mentioned in your speech that retention's a really important thing. So is there something I can go back to my soldiers with that we're pushing as far as retention?
So there's no one single answer for retention, because everybody's case is different. There's push and pull factors, and it's different from the regular force to the reserves to the geographic location to the family situation. But the big thing is leadership, and taking that individual, personalized approach, and talking to your subordinates about, okay, what could we do to keep you in? What needs to change? Why, or those that are staying, find out what's keeping you in. We can't have a cookie cutter solution for this. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but it's having that leadership involvement, I believe, is one of the more important aspects. Now there's others. You know, I talked about cost of living. That's one of them. Posting frequency is another. Not so applicable for the reserve force. Work-life balance, especially spousal employment, is another one. But I think from your perspective, leadership engagement is the big one.
Just stick around, we'll present you with a gift. Well, thank you once again, General. I think your presentation this morning was very sobering, to be honest. It has better educated us about the many challenges, both foreign and, quite frankly, internal inside the organization. So on behalf of His Worship, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and everyone in the audience, I want to wish you great strength and great ingenuity in dealing with those challenges. Maybe a big round of applause once again for the General. And to show our appreciation for you this morning, I'll ask for Jacques Aymon from Eamon Harnden to come forward and present you with, once again, a token of our appreciation. Thank you, Jacques. We'll have you step forward, General, and receive the gift.
Oh, it's heavy.
It's heavy. Yeah. And I just want to say I'm not quite sure what's in it. I don't think you have to take it through the sensors, but it's from the glebe area, and it's, I'm told, full of little items from the glebe to when you're not feeling that strong as you just, I think you just showed how strong you are. You may want to have a little choice in there that maybe brings you some humor, some memories, and positives. But boy, the positives that you just did in this speech was fantastic. So thank you on behalf of all of us.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much again. Wonderful, wonderful morning. Good to see everyone out here back networking and getting informed by some of the country's and city's great leaders. We're going to wrap up here in just a minute. I want to give you a couple updates from the Ottawa Business Journal. First, our